Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. Today I have a quick comparison for you. We're going to be taking a look at the Sig P365 and comparing it to its bigger brother, the Sig P365 XL. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be transitioning from the 365 to the 365 XL as my main carry. This one I've been using for about 2 years now, and I think it's time to step it up just a little bit. So let's go ahead and talk about it. This channel is proud to be sponsored by the USCCA, which is a very important and very powerful tool to have in your wallet. If you find the need to defend yourself, the USCCA will be there to defend you, so don't be caught without it. There'll be a link down below. Okay, so let's go and start off by talking about the original Sig P365. Now, when this thing hit the market, it was somewhat game-changing in terms of capacity, because prior to the 365, most offerings that you had out there, like the 938 or even the Shield, had a capacity of 6 rounds to 8 rounds, but I'd say on average, most subcompact 9mm pistols had a capacity of about 6 rounds, and that kind of steered a lot of people away from it because they wanted that extra mag capacity. So a lot of people went to the Glock 26 because it had 10-round standard capacity, and you could switch it out with just about every other mag that Glock offered in the same caliber, including stick mags. And so people liked having that versatility, and they just kind of steered away from these other very thin, lightweight subcompacts. In comes the 365 with a standard mag capacity of 10 rounds in that subcompact category, the true subcompact. Very light, short, thin. I mean, this thing is pretty tiny, and when you conceal it, it just totally disappears. That got rid of a lot of people's interest in some larger pistols because this one was easier to hide, but still had the capacity of 10 rounds and the additional capacity out of other Sig magazines to go from 10 rounds to 12 rounds or even 15 rounds as a backup magazine if you wanted to. So it really kind of hit the market and changed the game. There was a lot of companies that saw the popularity of the 365, like Springfield and others, that decided they were going to come out with something similar as well. But still, the 365 and its popularity just continued to grow. Now, even though the 365 is a great little subcompact pistol, for some people it still just didn't work, and that's because it is very small and it's very compact. Now, I have medium-sized hands. When I put my hand on here with the magazine inserted that has that little pinky extension, I can get pretty much a full grip. I don't have any fingers slipping off or anything like that. It feels pretty comfortable to me. It's still small, but I definitely shoot well with it, and that's why I carried it for the past couple years. If it's reliable, it's accurate, and I can shoot well with it, then it's definitely a contender to be carried. But again, for some people who don't have medium hands, they got those big bear paws, this thing was just too small. Even with that little pinky extension, it was just too small for their hands. Now, I did make some modifications to this one, just a simple modification because I don't change much when it comes to carry guns, but I added a Tribe Defense extended threaded barrel to it just to kind of squeeze a little bit more velocity without adding anything to the overall length. And I like that as much as the original barrel. It was just as accurate. But again, it just gave me a little bit of extra velocity out of that extra ½ inch of barrel right there. Otherwise, this thing is completely stock. So knowing that some people just couldn't use this, I mean, for the sheer fact their hands are just too big, Sig decided to come out with something a little bigger. And that's what I picked up right here. I just picked this up just the other day. We're going to take it out and do a bunch of testing with it, see how well I shoot between the two, and make sure that this one's going to be a viable option before I actually move over to it as my daily. But they came out with the Sig P365 XL. The size is in the name. It is XL versus a 365. It's just slightly larger, but there's more differences to this than you might think. It's not just a size thing. So let's go ahead and talk about the 365 XL and what it might have over the 365 and maybe what might not be as good as the 365. Okay, so let's go and talk about the 365 XL. Now, if you're not familiar with Sig's 365 lineup, there's about a dozen different models you can choose from the original 365 to 365X and different variants within that, and the 365 XL. Some come with optics, some don't, so there's a lot of different models and options to choose from. This is the basic 365 XL right here. Now, we're going to talk about some of the differences, some of the main differences before we get into the different sizes of each one, because when it comes to the measurements, just about every measurement is going to be different. Now, the 365 XL is a fantastic little pistol. I shot this several times. They were not mine, they were friends, but I shot it several times and I liked it quite a bit. Now, one of the things I really like about the 365 XL is just going to be the grip size itself. The grip size, to me, is a lot nicer in the fact that it fits my entire hand without having to have a pinky extension installed. So my hand fits on this grip completely, even with the flush fit magazine. Now, this does come with a flush fit magazine without a pinky extension on it, but in my opinion, as long as your hands aren't massive, you're not going to need a pinky extension on these. Now, one of the differences is that flush fit mag that comes with the 365 XL, that's going to hold 12 rounds versus the flush fit on the standard 365, which holds 10 rounds. So you're going from a magazine that is 10 rounds to 12 rounds without really adding anything to the overall length. Now, another thing I like about the 365 XL is that it also comes with an optics cut standard. Now, this is going to fit an RMSC type footprint. There's several different optics that you could choose out there. My two favorite, and the two that I'm going to be testing on this, and I'll do a comparison between those two as well, is going to be the Sig Romeo Zero and the Swamp Fox Optics Sentinel. The Sentinel, which is a full metal construction, and that's why I like the Sentinel. The Sentinel will fit on that RMSC footprint and should fit on there fine as well. But as long as you have something with an RMSC footprint, it will fit on the top of this. Now, you do lose that rear sight when you take off the optics or the optics cut cap on this thing. So try and keep that in mind as well. You don't have an option to have some type of backup sight. If that red dot goes out, well, you're just going to have to do your best, I guess. Because, again, you won't have the backup sight. It's such a small pistol. There's no way to put an optic on top of this thing and still have some type of backup iron sight. I mean, I'm sure somebody can think of a way, but as for right now, the rear sight does come off with that. But I like the option to add a red dot. I don't shoot faster with a red dot. It doesn't make anything faster in my opinion, or at least it doesn't make it faster for me. But I'm definitely more accurate with a red dot. And that's because it basically eliminates sight radius altogether. That's one of the things that people complain about when it comes to the standard 365. Yeah, it's a subcompact, great pistol, very accurate, but it has a very short sight radius, and longer sight radiuses can lead to a little bit better accuracy. With this one, you do end up with a longer sight radius, but switching it out for a red dot pretty much makes that irrelevant. Again, because with the red dot, you have that single aiming point, and as long as that red dot is where you want it, that's where your shot's going to go. So I do end up a little bit more accurate when I'm shooting with the red dot, so I'm going to try those different options. Now, you're also going to see a different trigger on the 365. This has the X trigger in it, and it's a phenomenal trigger. In my opinion, it is better than the standard curve trigger that comes on the standard 365. Finger placement is very good, it feels nice, and it does lead to what I think is probably a little bit more accurate shooting than a standard curve trigger. I mean, the curve trigger on this thing is really not that bad, but it's just a small step up, a small improvement over the standard 365 having this X trigger in it. Now, another thing I notice here is that we have a slight beaver tail on the back. Now, a beaver tail on something like this could be good or it could be bad. I mean, I never had a problem with the standard 365 that doesn't have a beaver tail. I never had a problem, you know, getting pinched by the slide or getting anything in the way. But again, we're talking about bigger hands here. That's why most people are going to go with the XL, is because you have bigger hands and you want to keep the meat of your hand out of the way. That beaver tail is going to help. However, it does add a little bit of length, and if you're concealing, it's always going to be this top part, right? So it's always going to be the grip and the back of the slide that's going to print the most. So if you're really trying to hide something and you want to hide it well, the 365 might be the way to go, because not only is it just shorter, but it doesn't have that beaver tail, which is going to stick out just a little bit. But I do like it. It makes it feel really comfortable. It sits in your hand nice, and it does mean that you can choke all the way up as high as you want without, you know, worrying about getting the meat of your hand behind that slide. So again, you have the optics cut, you have a flush fit 12 round magazine, you have a flat face X trigger in there. The sights are still going to be Sig's day-night sights. So we have day-night sights on this. So we have the tritium inserts in the sights, and the sights really do look really nice. Otherwise, I mean, the ergonomics of this are pretty much the same. The mag release, pretty much the same. The way the grip feels in your hand, also pretty much the same. It does feel a little bit more secure in my hand because the grip is larger on the back as well. And so while on the 365, the standard, I do get full, you know, 3-finger placement in the front. As you can see, there's a lot of meat from my hand hanging over at the bottom, right? This is why they keep it small. It makes it more concealable for sure, but my hand does kind of hang over the bottom quite a bit. On the XL, my hand doesn't do that. As you can see, the back of my hand right here, it's taken up almost completely. There's a little bit sticking out of the bottom, but really not quite as much as the standard 365. So my grip does feel a little bit better, a little bit more secure, and not like this thing's going to move around on me at all. So noticeable differences right off the bat, that's pretty much it. Otherwise, they really do look like the same pistol. I mean, in reality, looking at these two, other than those things that we talked about, they're nearly identical. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about some of those size differences between the 365 and the XL. If you're thinking about making that change, there's size differences in just about every single area. So I have a cheat sheet here to make sure that I get everything right. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is going to be the overall width. So the width is the one thing that's the least difference. I mean, we're talking about hundredths of an inch difference between the two. Nothing really major. To be honest with you, if I didn't see it on paper, I would look at these two with my naked eye, and I would say that they're the same width. Again, I don't see a width difference, but it's here on paper. So let's talk about the width. So on the standard 365, we're looking at a 1.06 inch width. Now, if we switch that over and we look at the overall width for the 365 XL, it's 1.1 inches. So it is a very minor difference between the overall width. Now, height, if we're looking at the standard 365, you're looking at 4.3 inches in height. And then if we switch that over to the XL, you're looking at 4.8. So we get about a ½ an inch difference in height. Now, barrel length, that's one of the things that I was interested in because I like the little bit of extra velocity you might get, even if it's only 50 feet per second. That still makes a difference, so that's why I put the longer barrel in there. And if we're talking about barrel length, you're looking at 3.1 inches for the 365 and 3.7 inches for the XL. So we gain a little bit over, we get 0.6 of an inch longer in the 365 XL. Now, we talk about weight. There's obviously going to be some weight differences. So the XL is going to come in at 20 ounces or 20.7 ounces, excuse me, where the 365 is going to be significantly lighter at 17.8 ounces. So it is going to be lighter, and consider the fact that you might be carrying a little bit more ammunition as well. I've done videos on the weight of ammunition in the past, but you're looking at maybe 2+ extra rounds, depending on which magazine you're carrying with each on that. Now, the sight radius, which is another big one. Again, if you're not going to be using a dot, you're going to be using the sights. Sight radius is going to matter to your accuracy. So on the standard 365, it's 4.9 inches of sight radius, and the sight radius on the XL is going to be 5.6 inches. So again, it's a pretty significant amount. 0.8 of an inch longer on the 365 XL, which is again going to help out with that accuracy a little bit. Overall length, which is going to matter to concealability. On the XL, you're looking at a 6.6 inch overall length. Overall length for the standard is going to be 5.8 inches. So 5.8 inches, again, another 0.8 of an inch longer for the XL versus the 365. And if you ask me, those are the dimensions that really matter. How tall is it? How long is it? How wide is it? What's the sight radius and what's the barrel length? Those are the things that really concern me. And again, we know that there's a difference in the overall grip length as well. And to me, even though I don't have the measurement on that, I'm going to say it's about a ½ an inch difference, maybe even 3/4 of an inch difference in the length of that grip versus the standard 365. Now, I always try and tell people don't carry it if you can't trust it. And you don't know if you can trust it unless you actually get out there and you use it. So it doesn't matter if you're going from the same model to the same model. So if I go from one 365 to another exact 365, that doesn't mean that the first one was reliable, but the second one's going to be reliable as well. No, it means that the first one was reliable and we don't know anything about the second one. So it doesn't matter what you're switching from or switching to, even if it's the same model, make sure you take it out and that it works. So even though at certain events, and I've borrowed them from friends and stuff like that, I know that their 365 XL works, but I don't know if this XL works. So that's going to be my next step. I'm going to take this thing out. We're going to put a bunch of different hollow points through it, a bunch of different brands, grain weights, different types altogether. We're just going to take it out. We're going to see how I use it, how well I can shoot with it, and how reliable it is with those different types of ammunition. So again, it's got to be a test for you. How well do you shoot with it? Are you accurate? Are you confident? Is it reliable? Can it eat through whatever you put in it, you know, that's got to be the test before this thing goes on your hip. That's, I think, the most important thing, because if it's not reliable, who cares if you have it on there? It's just a paperweight if it's not any good. So you want to make sure that you test every single one. But I am really excited to get this thing out there and try it out. Feels really good. It's very ergonomic. I love the way that the 365 XL feels in my hand. It just feels a lot more solid and sturdy than the standard XL. Now, my wife still carries with a standard 365. She has much smaller hands. For her, when she puts this in her hand, she gets the same type of comfort that I get out of the XL, but with a smaller version. So for her, it's perfect, and it has to be perfect for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal, and that's why they come out with all these different models. There's some people that might use a 26 and say, that's it. It's perfect for me. I love it the way that it works. You know, in my hand, it's absolutely perfect. There's some people who would say the Hellcat, or maybe even a 938, or, you know, whatever it is. If it works for you, that should be what you stick with. If you see something out there that might be a little bit better, give it a try first. You know, give it a try if you can. Even go rent one if you can, and see if that works for you. But don't just make the switch right away. So this is still going to be my EDC until this one has been proven. So again, try and keep that in mind. But just generally speaking, I think that this is going to be a massive upgrade for me, the way that I shoot and the size of my hands. Being able to put that red dot up there. And red dots don't really... I mean, red dots can increase, you know, the printing or the printability of something when it's concealed under a standard t-shirt. But in reality, these little micro dots that you put on there, they don't stick up very much at all. And if you're carrying like this, it's really just adding in width, not so much height, right? So it's not going to make that big of a difference putting a small subcompact or micro little dot up there. I don't think that's going to make a big difference at all. But I think for me, in terms of accuracy, it is going to improve my accuracy. I just know that from using red dots in the past. But it's a great little pistol. When I've shot them in the past, they've been a lot of fun. And I think that this thing is phenomenal. So I'm really excited to get this thing out there and try it. But if you're somebody like me who's maybe been using one of these for a long time, I think it would be worth at least checking out. Getting one in your hands, just kind of getting a feel for it and see how it feels. The holster that I use for this will work with this as well. So if we grab the holster, and I do use a hybrid holster, but I use one with a really strong, thick leather back that has very good retention. So if I put this in here, I still have locking retention. I don't know if you guys can hear that on camera. I'll get it closer to the microphone. But I have locking retention in this, and it's a really nice holster. But I can use this holster still with the XL. It's a little bit wider. It's going to be held in there a little bit tighter, but overall, it still fits just fine. I mean, it's kind of right there at the very end, but it fits for sure. And so I can kind of use those two holsters. So depending on what holster you have, you might be able to just simply cross over from one holster to the other without spending, you know, another 80 bucks on a decent, good quality holster. Now, if you're interested in seeing the rest of this comparison, which is going to continue in a part 2 video where we actually take it out and we use this at the range, and you'll see the difference between the 365 and the 365 XL. Maybe we'll test it out with some gel and see if there's any, you know, differences in the amount of penetration that we get out of each one, which should be negligible. But we'll take it out, we'll put it through its paces and make sure that this is good to go. And again, I'll take you guys with me in that comparison as well. So again, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. That'll let you know when the videos are coming out. And if you're not subscribed to the channel and you just like content like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. It helps me out quite a bit. Make sure you guys check out the USCCA down in the description box. Again, I want to thank you all very much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe. You guys have a great day.